The purple-pink hues of the looming dusk basked the skies as Julia returned home, supply baskets in tow. She reached within her satchel. As her keys met the lock, she heard a twig break around the garden, and she almost dropped them in response. Teeth gritted, a vein bulging on her forehead.
Those damn rabbits eating my flowers again?
With a scowl, Julia stowed her keys back in her bag, placed her baskets onto her porch, and went to investigate. Yet, her feet rooted to the ground as she turned the corner. Before her mother's grave knelt a gloomy figure, cloaked in long lavender robes, a set of horns protruding from the sides of its head.
Excuse me?
Her voice broke while she pried open the gate and entered the garden.
Can I help you?
The figure turned its head, the empty white of its blinded eyes meeting the blue of hers. It froze Julia's very soul, to which it then exuded an old female voice.
My, haven't you grown since last I've seen you?
The stranger rose to her feet.
The family resemblance between you and Carmela is quite striking.
She removed her horned hood and lowered her crimson cowl. Before Julia stood a foreboding woman of short silvery hair and skin so pale it might as well belong to a corpse. A strange insignia lay drawn upon her forehead, a sketch made of ominous cursives.
Your eyes.
Ebonhearth muttered. The crone chuckled at her remark.
Is it not uncouth to comment on a person's eyesight before even asking for their name?
Then who the hell are you, and how do you know my mother?
Julia stated, venom dripping from her tongue. The hag peered back at the grave with a stiff, unnatural movement.
You wrote her name on this tomb, did you not? However,
she cracked her neck back in place.
It appears that time has erased what was once written here.
Ebonhearth clenched her hands.
Answer my damn question!
The sinister woman split her lips into an eerie smirk and secreted a giggle-like scoff that assaulted her ears.
My names are many, but Beatrice Ravencroft shall suffice.
Hands behind her back, the woman stepped forward.
Carmela and I share a little history. Thus it is only fair that I'd pay her my respects.
Julia quaffed her own saliva, breath quickening with each stride that vanished between them.
After all this time?
She uttered, forcing a bile down her throat.
Well, it does not matter where she is currently, now does it?
Beatrice snickered, her grin stretched unusually wide. Julia opened her mouth to bite back at the hag's words, but her eyes locked with a corpse-like stare, and her throat caved in on itself. Her legs trembled, and her eyes stung, but she ground herself by biting her lips and clenching her fists tighter. The woman stopped but a few feet away, the ghastly stench of death assaulting her nostrils. Beatrice did not lower her head, but rather slanted it to the side and ogled her with what felt like morbid curiosity, an insufferable smirk upon her face.
Do enjoy the festival,
uttered the crone, as she straightened her neck and began taking her leave, leaves crunching beneath her heels as she marched past Julia.
I've heard events like the summer solstice are utterly to die for.
Her breath hitched as she veered to face the hag.
Is that a threat?
Silly child.
Ravencroft stilled her steps, turned around and slowly approached her once again.
If that were a threat, and I truly wanted to hurt you.
She lowered and bent her frame so that the tips of their noses nearly touched, and their eyes saw nothing but each other's reflections. And waging war against her own feet, Ebonhearth frantically sought to escape, but the near intoxicating aura the hag emitted froze her very core, as if a paralyzing poison filled her lungs.
I would have already done so.
Her soft-spoken words skimmed Julia's ears, while her soul-searching stare sent tremors up her back. But before she could do something, anything, to try and get away, the crone snapped herself into a proper stance and backed off of her own volition. She raised her hood over her head and veiled her face with her cowl.
Until we meet again, Julia Ebonhearth.
Veering away, the old hag exited the garden and started towards the woods, but not without backhandedly waving her goodbye. It took seconds of standing alone by her mother's grave for Julia to recover the breath she did not know was gone. And when the realization struck her like a ton of bricks, Ebonhearth fell to her knees and clutched at her heart.
What the?
She gulped, as if freed from a strangling grasp.
Hell was that?
Her heart slowly ceased its wild thumps, and she forced herself back onto her feet. And once she regained her composure, Julia veered her sights to her mother's grave. She frowned.
What in the world?
The stone had been wilted, a bloody handprint smeared where she had engraved her name. She approached the tomb with wobbly steps, and a chunk of it crumbled at her touch. The markings were indecipherable, and if she did not know any better, she'd think the grave had been erected for centuries. But time hadn't withered this stone. Blood magic did.